Good morning. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Happy Saturday. It's the weekend. So welcome to all of you. I hope you are having a great start to the weekend. And if you are joining me live, I'm really excited to kick off the weekend with each and every one of you. I'm appreciative of you joining here. And for the record, I'd love to hear where you're tuning in from, either live, because this is a live show, or on the replay. For those of you who are new joining, my name is Dr. Melissa Gallagher. I'm a naturopathic physician. I have a focus on balancing disease within the body from a natural perspective, using diet, using natural therapies and techniques, as well as honing in on stress hormone levels and minimizing inflammation levels in the body, as well as invigorating your detox organ, which is your lymphatic system. So those are my areas of specialty. And in the COVID season, I think we just hit over 700. I think we're on our 701st video here on YouTube. So I produce a lot of video content, and the live show is just one segment of content that you'll find here through YouTube, and on Instagram, I have stories and a whole bunch of educational info. So welcome to all of you. First, before we dig into today's topic, which is going to be about a really unique symptom that affects the skin from COVID and how to naturally address that, I want to highlight how amazing the answer to cancer. It's a 9-part docuseries, a free docuseries. I have been jonesing out. I've been dedicating time in between our crazy COVID at home teaching schedule. And if you haven't watched it, it's pretty phenomenal. Last night's was going all natural and the power of plants. I have to admit, I wasn't able to finish it all last night, but I'm finishing it up today. So if you haven't checked out this docuseries, it's free. The link is down below. Instagram, it'll be up there when this all goes on IGTV. But it is power punch. Like the Thursday episode, Alternative Methods for You and Your Loved Ones, mind-blowing. Like, did you know cancer has stem cells and there are seeds to growing cancer, and they actually are non-responsive to chemo and radiation? I bet you didn't know that. There's a whole bunch of other awesome stuff. So do check that out. It is quite mind-blowing. And even for somebody like me, I'm constantly learning, and there's just always amazing morsels of highly powerful, very implementable resources and tips in this docuseries. So again, it's free, and I hope you check it out. So I wanted to give that some credit because it's literally, I'm taking notes. I have a notebook to that. And actually, I'm probably going to produce a lot of content related to some of your questions I'm getting from you about that docuseries. But today we're talking about COVID, coronavirus, that is plaguing all of us in all sorts of ways. The US hit 5 million cases, and that is in total since the beginning of us testing individuals. So we are past 5 million now. We have almost 163,000 fatalities. Yesterday, we posted 1,100 new fatalities, which is not boding well for our progression. We are seeing also other countries very high on this scale. So Brazil's at 2.9, India's at 2 million now. They hit that recently. Russia's at 882. They're kind of stabilizing, so we won't see them hit 1 million for a few weeks. South Africa is kind of stabilizing, 545,000 cases. The world is at over 19.2 million total cases. Now, I do want to make a note. India, there is a healthcare worker strike. An association for health, I believe it's advocates or activists. They have a strike because of the lack of PPE for healthcare professionals. So they're dealing with a lot of the same things we dealt with before. On the international front, for all of you international viewers, I have a lot of you who watch from Australia. Australia looks like they're in stabilization. They are kind of at that maybe beginning of the threshold there. They have had, and what I'm highlighting is Victoria is the main kind of epicenter in Australia. They continue to be on the second round of 6-week lockdowns, but they're calling COVID in that particular area a public health bushfire. So people understand, obviously, the wildfires in Australia at the beginning of the year. COVID is now a different type of wildfire. They have seen, now this is just all in perspective for all of you here in the US, they've had 70% of the total fatalities come from that Victoria region. And they have a total of 181 deaths in that region. You know, what's insane is we have some states that are posting over that quantity of fatalities on a daily basis. So it's just all perspective. Like they're in almost a 12-week lockdown and they have 181 fatalities. And we are seeing some states not even in that phase, but are posting 300 plus, like Texas. So I just like to give some perspective to also reference us that there are other countries that are dealing with this in a different way. Tokyo is having COVID fatigue, just like many of us have experienced. They are still having some outbreaks. They have highlighted that 2 of the organizers of the Tokyo Olympics, they have tested positive. And that, as far as we know, is still being delayed until July of next year. I hope that it stays the way it is. But also, one of my assistants lives in the Philippines, and so I'm really tuned into what's going on there. She was having a really stressful time because they were approaching another lockdown because the Philippines are having a spike. They posted over 4,200 new positive cases yesterday and 41 deaths. And they've gone into a mandated lockdown, I think for 10 or 12 days. And then, because I just have to highlight this, you guys know I'm reading a lot of news. And so I'm going through all sorts of stuff and trying to disseminate what to add to this that's impactful. But many of you know, I am a Bravo TV junkie. It's like my favorite channel. It's my disconnect. It's my escape route from the world. And I love the Real Housewives, particularly the Roni Real Housewives of New York. So all of you Bravo fans like myself, they apparently taped a reunion episode in person this week. So just FYI, it's coming out. I'm still trying to finish the season. I am way behind on my Bravo watching, but catching up. Okay, so let's dig into what's going on in some of the states. I have a lot of really impactful news. So for all of you all around the US, I'm hoping this will be impactful. First of all, yesterday we added 54,000 new positive cases. And California continues to be number 1 at 538,000. They had another high day, over 8,400 new cases and 142 deaths. Florida is having all sorts of issues. Florida is reporting that there are many hospitals not reporting their cases, both the positive cases, negative cases, and fatalities. So they've gone from 246 hospitals daily reporting down to 159. And we don't know why. So the DHHS that is now getting the reports, the poll that usually happens around 10:20 p.m., it's not reflecting quite a large number of cases. 90 plus hospitals they're not reporting. I don't know why. Nobody knows. But the change from one day to another day, it went from 9,547 positive cases down to 6,385. But, with a reduction of 90 hospitals, we have no sense of how many of those hospitals have tested or even had fatalities. So that is some reporting issue. But even despite that, the total in Florida was 7,000, again, without this reporting. 7,686 positive cases with 170 fatalities. Texas had another large day. They are at 474,000 total cases. They added over 7,000 new cases and had another big day in fatalities, 293 fatalities. One of the things that's come out in Texas, they have the largest federal prison outbreak that it's the worst outbreak in one single setting. It's over 1,300 inmates have COVID, and a large portion of the employees also have it. So that's just an FYI. Now, let's talk about Georgia. Georgia's getting a lot of news or news coverage about our COVID situation. We are at almost 210,000 total cases. We had 4,100 new positive cases yesterday and 91 fatalities. And one of those fatalities was a 7-year-old boy in a county in the metro Atlanta county, suburban metro Atlanta. One of our counties that literally we're kind of where we live, our backyard is the border to Fulton and Cherokee County. And then a few, like 2 miles away is there's like a trio of counties. There's kind of a connection. Well, the one county where we do some of our shopping, not anymore, but where, we used to go to the kids' park and all this stuff. It's in a county that is one of the largest school systems. This is really kind of under the radar. Yesterday, Cobb County Schools announced that they have, at minimum, 100 positive cases linked to students and staff. And so those are suspected positives or confirmed positive cases in Cobb County. And here's the irony is Cobb County has not officially they've announced they're going online. So some of these might be in person. It's just kind of interesting that already before kids actually kick off the school year, they've got 100 already that have, between the teachers and the students, they've got 100 positive cases. So that's just a little tell about what's happening with schools. There continues to be a lot of backlash for the one student who snapped a photo of that very busy, populated hall with hardly 10% of the students wearing masks. I saw some interviews. She held strong, even though she violated the school code of conduct, but has let the nation know that schools are not adhering to CDC guidelines. So that's a concern for all parents. I do want to highlight some things that are happening in state, some good, some bad, just a whole bunch of COVID related news. So in Massachusetts, for all of you in Massachusetts, they have paused the reopening and they are reimposing COVID related restrictions, particularly about the gatherings. And the other thing that they're seeing is that the big lockdown is limiting gatherings outside or any type of gathering. 100 was the kind of threshold and the phasing of reopening. Now they're scaling it back to 50 because people are getting a little lax. They also are maintaining bars being closed. And they've also identified the bars that are moonlighting as restaurants, but they're really bars, that they're closing those as well. So all of those are staying closed. And Massachusetts, they had a world of pain in March and April. And so they're very sensitive. It's like you touch a hot stove, you're not going to touch it again. You may get close, but you have memory. And so Massachusetts, they're scaling it back because they don't want to have the degree, especially we saw a lot of healthcare workers catch COVID in social settings or in the work world. Now, the other thing that there's some new things going on in Hawaii. Hawaii's gone the other way. They are reinstating the inter-island travel restrictions. So originally it was, very isolated per island. Hawaii is a multitude of islands that are collectively part of that state. So now the Hawaiians can move from one island to another. That is very positive, given the fact that they're now showing a lessening of the spread. But that also, we're going to have to watch and see how effective this is if they can continue to keep that at bay. Now, Michigan University is the first of college campuses who are testing campus living. So they've got kids coming on to campus, living in dorms, and before they get all their stuff out of their car to load into their new living space, they have to go through COVID testing. So that's a big thing. They do have they also are offering 10% of classes online, but mostly it's in person. Also, there's a hot spot that has occurred this summer in Iowa. I've never actually been to the Great Lake area, but there's the Iowa Great Lakes region. And it's up in that area where it all kind of kicked off Memorial Day and then through vacationers. And I know I've seen several of you comment and lament about, you guys are dealing with folks that are coming into those areas. You might live there, but you've got vacationers and the fear of COVID coming in. So one of the things that we're seeing is really interesting. A medical anthropologist does an assessment of this region. So as I said, it kicked off Memorial Day. So as of Memorial Day this year, they had 6 COVID cases. Fast forward to August 7th, which was yesterday, they had a total of 377 cases and 6 people who've died. Now that doesn't seem like a lot, but we just have to put it in perspective. When we're posting, 8,000, 9,000 cases and 200, 300 fatalities per state, it becomes we get kind of watered down. But this is an epicenter in this location. What the medical anthropologist who actually lived there, he interviewed over 80 residents, families, and friends that he knew. And he identified that the spread had a lot to do with the cultural idea of what he called self-sufficiency. And that a lot of the communication was, well, I'm not going to wear a mask because I'm not scared of COVID. I'm not going to wear a mask because I'm not scared. I believe in God. And they had, assortment of kind of responses to the fact that people were not taking and adhering to social distancing or mask wearing. And he was trying to figure out, why is that? Because, that area, it's a smaller area, but they still were seeing people coming in. And that's where he's attributed the cultural kind of mentality. Pull it up, you kind of pull up yourself by the bootstraps, and this kind of self-sufficiency, freedom, we can do it on our own type of mentality, factoring into how this community was addressing COVID. I just think it's very interesting. I'm not going to comment my opinion on that. I see our live chat's a little hot today. And thanks, Pat, and all of our friends keeping it, very clean. You don't have to agree with me. It's all good. But if you come on purposely spamming, you've got to go. I'm sorry. It's just not the format for this. We are here to support our community. And I have an onus to, now we have 278,000 subscribers in my community who are seeking information to support themselves and their families and to keep them healthy. And so I am delivering fact-based, science-based, research-based clinical data that you can then disseminate how you want to how you choose. So that's on you. But I want to highlight when I get asked, well, why is this happening? Or why do you think this is happening? I think it's interesting. A medical anthropologist looks at the kind of social dynamics and just the mentality, because we are in the US and there are different pockets. People kind of believe or adhere to certain kind of cultural patterns, and that is anthropology at its greatest. It's fascinating, so I find that fascinating. I read that, wanted to report it to you all. Okay, so this morning, I am drinking my keto coffee in my Wild and Free. It's kind of funny. I love keto coffee. It has MCT oil in it. It's really good. I needed it. I went to bed really early last night and woke up really early. And I have a free day today. Gabriel and Brian went up to the mountains to see some friends that have been like us, doing nothing and staying home. And Gabriel's having a play date with his two cute little friends, Delaney and Lily. They're very sweet, and he loves his little girls. So he's very excited, and Mama's got time at home. I'm working today. Very excited. I'm going to do some self-care, some videoing. And so you guys are going to see the net result of about 8 hours solo. I'm excited. Okay, so back to some news. Minnesota had a funeral in I think it was the second week of July. The gentleman died. He was in his 50s. Actually, he was in his 60s. In Minnesota, they had a funeral the week after, and 50 people attended this funeral, and it was hosted at a church. And since then, out of the 50, 30 people have contracted COVID. And they attribute it to the funeral goers primarily. And they even interviewed the priest, and he basically had kind of a timeline of everything happened. They had the service, and then after they had a donut and coffee reception, and he basically said everything went downhill at the coffee donut reception. They had chairs all kind of socially distanced, but the goers brought, the chairs closer. They started removing their masks, eating donuts. They were crying and wiping their tears, not sanitizing or washing their hands, hugging each other. And that is the outcome. And that is just an example of a very simple, very ritualistic type of community-based gathering that we do for the closure and celebrating an individual's life can actually cause a high-risk situation or create a high-risk situation. So, if you can, and you have to attend a funeral, and I hate that we are in that situation where many of you are dealing with that, either in your families or people that you know, because COVID is so overwhelming to our community here. If you can attend virtually, you can still pay your respects in that regard, and it's much safer for you. So that's a healthier risk, reduced risk, risk-free, particularly when you're virtual. And a lot of church programs and memorial services and, the funeral homes are actually offering that as an option. So if you can do that, please consider that as a safer option. Yesterday, I think it's official. Let me see, I think it's official. But yesterday kicked off the beginning of Sturgis, which is a huge gathering of folks in the Dakotas. I think it's North Dakota. So Sturgis kicked off, and a ton of bikers are descending into that community. Already the pictures last night was showing lots of non-social distancing, lots of non-masks. People are masked, but you've got a combination, and it will be right now the largest worldwide gathering during COVID, and it will be the largest worldwide social medical experiment. And so we are just going to have to see how this bodes for not just the goers of the attendees of Sturgis, but also for the community. So I just put that out there. I also do have some information about kids. So we've got two specific reports, two CDC morbidity, mortality weekly reports. These usually come out on Friday. I didn't catch it in early enough for yesterday's video. Otherwise I would have had that. But we've got two reports. They look at the hospitalization rates and the characteristics of children 18, under 18, that were hospitalized for COVID. And what they break down is in total, and this is from March 1st to July 25th. So the numbers have moved up since then, but up to those days, we've seen 338,000 positive cases, positive results with COVID. So we've had 338 kids test positive, 18 and under test positive for COVID. We've also seen the rates increase. And there's actually a chart because, I love my visuals. These are the different charts. So this first chart is based on the per population. Let's see, A. Okay, so A is, all right, so we've got tests and then hospitalizations. So this just shows the different dotted lines. So the main dotted line is 2 years and under. So we're seeing smaller, younger children be the greater quantity of cases. And it also matches up with, they are also more likely to be hospitalized. Okay, so these are total cases. These are the hospitalizations based on the cases. And the lower number are 2 to 4. So we've seen the lowest number out of them, the 2 to 4 year old range, there's kind of a variance. And then kids 5 to 17 in this range. But the kids who right now are showcasing historical data, the more likely age group to be hospitalized with COVID are children under the age of 2. This matches up with what we know. They have more RNA in the nasal pharynx. And also their systems are not as robust in terms of the ACE2, and we see more of the lung breathing challenges. I will say this is what's interesting. A third of the kids who have tested positive have been sick enough to be hospitalized. And when I say admitted, they've actually moved into ICU, either in a regular hospital or pediatric children's hospital. And the numbers, these numbers, friends, for kids' hospitalizations are almost exactly the same as adult hospitalizations. So, you know, school being another social experiment, we will probably see, and I'm just saying that this is unfortunate, we will probably see, my predictive kind of reasoning behind this, if this is where we see kids' cases, and when kids have basically, a lot of them have been in quarantine, or, you know, they're not going to school, schools have been closed, daycares and, you know, centers to watch them, camps and things like that have closed. Now schools reopening, we'll probably see those cases increase. Now, on that other front, the most significant underlying health concern for kids that got them hospitalized is that 42% of the children had obesity as an underlying health concern. And that's actually higher than the average. So 1 out of every 5 kids right now in the US is diagnosed with obesity, some range. It could be mild to extreme obesity. But 42% of those hospitalized for COVID had obesity. So it definitely is an underlying element. And we don't know why. But I will also say that it is affecting race, like the ethnicities differently. So the dark blue is white. The dark blue is white. The light, you know, darker. So the middle blue is so these are white children, Black children, and Hispanic children. Hispanic children are hit the worst, and then we see Black kiddos. So we need to be aware of that. So Black and Hispanic children are disproportionately more impacted by COVID. And there's a whole assortment of potential reasons, but that's really, really critical. So I will post this link for any of you. I know a lot of you are in the schools. This is, I think, really critical. Now, the other thing that they looked at, actually, wait a second, before I go into that. So I do want to highlight something that has just been released by DHHS released this, but there is a grant through the National Institutes of Health for something called PRE, and then all caps VAIL, VAIL, Prevail Kids. And it is a grant. So a lot of money has come behind this, and it's a research grant. And basically what they're going to do is they want to identify an assortment of things. So some of the things that they want to identify specifically are, why are these kids being hospitalized and what's behind that inflammatory syndrome. So we've got the kind of diagnosis for COVID in kids when it's severe. It's multi-inflammatory system disease, MIS-C. And so they want to identify if there's any laboratory, any biomarkers where they can rule out potentially kids who are more susceptible. So this Prevail wants to identify kids who are at most risk via biomarkers. And so lab work and other serum related assessments of the cardiac, renal, respiratory, hematologic, GI, dermatologic, and neurological biomarkers that indicate that there might be higher risk for these kids. So I really appreciate this. You know, and this is the shorter of this, but this is the whole grant. I read it. I'm fascinated by this stuff. But one of the things that their scope is, they want to accomplish rapid diagnosis and characterization of the spectrum of MIS-C associated with SARS-CoV-2. And they want accurate risk stratification and prediction of severe disease outcomes with regard to the spectrum of SARS-CoV-2 or CoV-2 exposure and infection throughout the course of the illness. So they really want to drill down. So genetics, Omics and other biomarkers are critical, and they are going to, this is really fascinating. They're going to look at ABO blood groups. So they're going to do a little blood group assessment. So that might align with what we know. A's and sometimes the ABs are more likely. We've seen AB in one study show that they weren't likely, but B's were. But we've seen 2 studies match up where A blood types were more likely to be severe. They also want to look at the H antigen, secretor status, serum proteins, lipids, metabolites, virus clades and subtypes, a whole bunch of stuff from genetic, metabolic, just really, this is fascinating. So this is going to yield hopefully some interesting stuff. So the big question that they want to answer through this is, why do children have milder illness? Are there differences in childhood biology, like gender and puberty? You know, think about, you've got girls who sometimes hit puberty before boys. So is there a difference there? They will also want to look at, are there genetic host differences associated with the different severity phenotypes that then lead to MIS-C? They want to look at if there are innate mucosal, humoral, cellular, and other adaptive immune profiles that are associated with either reduced or increased risk of progressive disease, as well as they want to see if these kids have maybe been diagnosed with other coronavirus infections, meaning they're going to apply some of those same things that maybe a previous infection gave them some of those antibodies. And I've highlighted some of that. So this is really interesting. See how, I don't know if you can see it. I see it. I love this stuff. But basically, it's adding to already existing research, and now they're going to drill down even further, and they're going to drill down into the pediatric world and ask some of those additional questions. So they're going to apply a lot of already what's been researched, but again, with kids, they've been left out of a lot of these studies. The other thing too is they want to see if SARS-CoV-2 reinfection will cause worse disease as seen with antibody-dependent enhancement. It's called ADE. As we've seen with dengue, fever, other viral infections, and will future vaccines carry a risk of the ADE phenomenon? So they're going to be doing maybe some vaccine assessments, which again, that's lacking in the current clinical trials. So I love it. The other thing, this is really fascinating. So you guys know C. bumblebee D is a big part, not a huge part, but definitely 50 to 60% of my practice scope in terms of what I work with in my cancer patients. If you guys are listening to The Answer for Cancer, you're hearing more about medical-based marijuana. But it's going to ask, does substance use, i.e. nicotine, so that means, like, you know, these kids are doing those e-inhalers or the e-cigs. Does nicotine, marijuana exacerbate or trigger MIS-C through immune activation? And what's fascinating is we're going to find out if any of them are taking medical marijuana for other purposes. And there is already great data, not necessarily in the US research pool, but definitely we see this abroad in Europe and Asia, even in Australia, that there are triggers and turning on of NK cells, the fighter cells, and that those can eradicate cancer cells and minimize the growth of those seeds of cancer. So it is very, very fascinating. That is really exciting from the fact that if you have kids and you're concerned, or a teacher, or you have grandkids, or anybody in your family, little kiddos, and anybody under the age of 18, we need to have a better scope of what this looks like for them. Now, the other thing that the CDC posted, additional research about the MIS-C. So that is the multi-inflammatory syndrome that we see in children due to COVID. And these are those cases, a majority of the kids that are in ICU end up going into this full-blown overly immune impacted. It's almost like the immune system turns on itself in all the organs. And so we see reduction in the blood pressure levels, we see heart failure, we see a ton of challenges there. This, I looked at a total, this was in April, look at a cluster, and there, this is broad in terms of Europe and Yeah, so it's basically Europe. I believe it's totally Europe. Let me look. Nope, it's US. So this is based in the US, March to July of 2020. What it looked at was a total of 570 cases, and 364, which is 64%, were ICU, warranted moving into the ICU category. And they had different complaints. So big common complaints was abdominal pain, vomiting, and diarrhea for kids, which is kind of interesting. That is a little bit of a different type of experience. But to our topic today, a big one was rash. They had dermatological and mucocutaneous. So they had mucosal related irritation. And some of the kids, and even now adults we're seeing, they get rashes inside their mouth. If any of you who have had in the past as a child probably had chickenpox, I actually had them in my mouth and they are the back of my throat. You can see all these like little red dots. That is horrible. And that is how the virus affects it in the body. It targets skin, it targets all different systems. But this is particularly quite fascinating. What they wanted to do is they wanted to look at, the features of MIS, which usually are some sort of shock to the system. So cardiac involvement, gastrointestinal symptoms, and then elevated biomarkers. And what we're going to see is that those elevated biomarkers are going to be used in this NIH, what is it called? It's called the Prevail Kids. This is the new grant that's happening. So fascinating stuff. I also have some other information, particularly when we're talking about, race and ethnicity with regard to COVID here in the US. There's a research letter that was posted to JAMA yesterday as well. I actually printed this yesterday. And it's a specific focus at the allocation of COVID relief funding to disproportionately Black counties. And it highlights the fact that we already know that disproportionately we're seeing the Black and Latino populations, adults and kids, being disproportionately affected. And so this breaks down a little bit of the detail about funding, relief funding, and essentially, we are seeing there be I don't want to say mishandling, but we're seeing that impact of where funding is going, how it's impacting those communities. And the spread of COVID could very well be prevented or reduced by additional resources. Some of those things, if you're curious, we have in Georgia, there are over 80 counties that do not have a community medical health system. Like there isn't a hospital in these counties. And that includes like if you're a mom and you want to labor and have your child at a hospital, your county that you live in has no services for you. So that is tragic. Okay, so I just put that out there. Now, let's see. Some other news, airlines have taken a big hit this particular month. Delta announced a 20% reduction of their staff that were furloughed, or a reduction of staff. So 20% out of their large community. Delta's based here in Atlanta. They've let 17,000 go prematurely. Either they've given them a buyout package, or the employees have gone into early retirement. And we're seeing American is projected on October 1st, they will have a reduction of 25,000 frontline workers. So we're going to see this impact the airline community. On a interesting note, in terms of therapeutics, there's a new therapeutic trial that will begin in Miami. It kicked off actually this week in another country. There are several countries, Australia, Romania, the Philippines, and the US, have a particular pill they're going to experiment with. It's called Ifenprodil. It's a 1970s medication that treats blood circulation disorders. But what they've identified and isolated is that there's a compound in this pill that can minimize the lung cell damage from COVID, meaning it can reduce that scarring issue in the lungs that often gives people the extended cough. that is going to be critical. So that is exciting. And let me write down our time. Okay, so 39, 34. Okay, so the other thing before we kick off our topic, on Monday, tune in on Monday, I'm going to be talking specifically about COVID and chronic fatigue syndrome. There's more and more information, more data out about the links between COVID triggering chronic fatigue. And I am a person who's dealt with that from Epstein-Barr in my 20s. So I can speak specifically to that. I deal with this as a naturopath in my clinic. And so if you or anybody in your life has had Epstein-Barr active or it's come back again or deals with ME or CFS, they'll want to tune in on Monday. So I promise that's going to be a good episode. But today, I want to talk to you about this really interesting skin condition. So this is what it looks like. There's an inflammatory thrombogenic vasculopathy. And basically what it is it's micro blood clotting that ends up reducing circulation, and you're getting blood pooling and broken blood vessels in all different parts of the body. It's the skin, sometimes it's on the feet, toes, bottom of the feet, hands, face, arms. And this is problematic. I mentioned this a little bit yesterday. I really wanted it to be the topic for today because there's so much that's going on with what we call cutaneous thrombosis, which is skin-related blood clotting. It's an effect of potentially bigger blood clotting issues like pulmonary embolism, thrombosis, maybe even some phlebitis. If you haven't had that, it's a good thing. A lot of times these can be very painful. Depending on the type of thrombosis, they can be fatal. Many of you know, and I can't really see it because the birthday card is up there, but if you see this picture there, that's Serena Williams for Instagram right there. I've worked with her actually a few weeks after her pulmonary embolism in 2011. So April 2011, she was in town at HSN because she has a line. Ineris is her line of bags and clothing. She was off from tennis because she had an injury, really bizarre injury. Glass broke at the ESPN Awards, and it required surgery to an artery or a vein in her ankle and leg. And that ended up creating a situation where she had pulmonary embolism. This is all public knowledge, so I'm not, destroying HIPAA violations or anything like that. And she ended up coming into my clinic and working with not just myself, but a series of my practitioners for a multitude of treatments. And one of the things that was really fascinating was learning just how extensive an injury, just a normal injury, a surgery, and then immobilization, meaning she was no longer running around the court and had to have her feet up and was in multiple boots, and then, started feeling bad. And her one physician, said this, she even said, I feel off. I feel like I need to have a scan. And sure enough, they found a pulmonary embolism and immediately rushed her into surgery. So fast forward 6 weeks later, she's in town and we're working with her, and they had a camera crew. For any of you regulars, I've highlighted this before. It was seriously a highlight of my career, just the whole experience. But what she had was a venous related arterial. So there's arterial and venous thrombosis. And if she had not acted, it would have been fatal for her. And for many people, they're walking around with thrombosis and have no idea. I remember when I was in, middle school, a friend of mine, and my mom had been friends with this family and knew both of the mother and father. She ended up going to middle and high school with them. And my friend's dad died of a blood clot from having a car accident. And like weeks later, the blood clot, it moved and it was fatal. And that is how deadly these things can be. COVID is triggering this blood clotting issue. It's this overwhelming blood clotting. And what we're seeing is potentially there being a connection between underlying prediabetes and diabetes. That's a vascular disorder. And this blood clotting disorder, it's a perfect storm for these conditions where people literally have, I don't know if you're able to see this well, but this is this blood clot. Can you see that? Yeah. So this is a blood clot in this kind of subcutaneous zone. And it's a clustering of blood, and then it puts there's accumulation of blood, and you start to see like a bruising, almost a rash. So people describe that as a rash, but what is happening and why it's so detrimental, there were people that have reported, at King's College, 21% of people in this King's College UK related survey, 21% of these COVID positive patients, that was the only symptom they had, this weird reddening or rash. It can be in the oral cavity. It can be on the tongue. It can be the back of the throat. It can be inside the cheek. It can be anywhere in the body. And the blood vessels are either rupturing or they're impaired. And it's this abnormal dynamic where the blood vessels are experiencing this blood clotting, and we're seeing it in a rash form. So I wanted to highlight some things that you can do to address this. So internally, K2 is a very good blood thinner. Now, if you're on a heparin or any of the warfarins, you want to consult your pharmacist before you start taking any of the blood thinners, because you're already thinning your blood. And that it may be, and I haven't seen any specific research, that warfarin may be preventative for some of these blood clotting conditions with COVID. There's been mention people are on that, but nothing specific that I've seen yet that's drilled down into is this minimizing the severity. But I do want to make a note, this particular condition can, you can do a few things. So if it's happening in the legs, compression therapy, like I post on Instagram a lot. I have this one vein that's been bothering me. It tends to pop up in the summertime. I posted last Sunday's video about, vein and vascularity. Castor oil packing can be beneficial because you can get the lymph moving to help kind of clear out some of the excess blood. The lymphatic system will be the system when we've got blood clotting or accumulation of blood particles that are now spilling out of the normal channels, the small blood vessels, and now it's in interstitial space. We call that space in between the vascular lymph valves and lymph capillaries and blood capillaries and the skin. The lymph will actually pull that in and remove it. So there are some very powerful lymph draining supplements. If you click on the link down below to my full script, it is patient oriented. So you set up a patient account, which is all you get HIPAA. It's HIPAA certified, so everything's safe. But you gain access to shop within my store. And I recommend, and one of my most popular products for all of my patients that have lymphatic disorders, vascular imbalances, maybe they already have chronic vascular insufficiency, which would put you at greater risk for this. We need to clear out the excess blood, and the lymphatic system is going to be what you do. So I love to recommend castor oil packing of the actual location. So again, reference, I'll post the castor oil pack video for your reference, but do check that out. The other thing that can be helpful is the sea bumblebee D serums. And there's a really wonderful serum that you can put on. I have a menthol form, and then there's also very gentle lavender and eucalyptus base. That the sea bumblebee D is very lymph promotive. It can reduce some of the pain. Like some of the folks have described that they have pain as well. And the pathophysiology of this coagulation or the coagulopathy, and that just means blood clotting, the kind of, particularly in these small vessels, there can be, it can be painful. And so we've got to deal with the topical pain. And ultimately, we need to deal with the viral component. So the vitamin K is going to thin the blood a little bit. Hopefully, it breaks up some of that. Fibrin defense is another one that I recommend, and it's something that helps break up. It uses proteolytic enzymes like nattokinase and serrapeptase, which are very pro-fibrin defenders. So they will break up the density. There's this tightness, fiber. It's what keeps, it's like glue, sticky glue. It's what keeps these, the clotting, bonded, all these red blood cells kind of bonded together. You break up those fibrins, add vitamin K, we get to move that out. So those are some things that I recommend in the skin condition category. And I will post some, I have a newer link. My Octagon Biolabs, they just switched their new shopping cart. So I have to change all my links. So I'll post a link today for all of you to grab. There's actually a 20% off coupon. So we love coupons. I love saving money. It's really high quality. And more that we're learning about the sea bumblebee D, it is a very pro-immune supportive herbal botanical that matches very well with enhancing that immune response from the NK cells, the natural killer cells, to the T cells. Those are the memory cells. Those are some of the fighter cells. Those are the cells that get harbored and get expressed via the thymus gland. Those are highly beneficial. And Lady of Fire Poetry says, is it okay to use aspirin to thin the blood? To be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of aspirin. And I know it gets like, take baby aspirin. There are much better things than aspirin. If your doctor's recommended that, I don't deviate from what doctors recommend. And I don't denigrate, their advice. I approach things more, again, as a naturopath from the root cause. So, aspirin doesn't necessarily address the root cause of why we're having this coagulation. And some people have a genetic predisposition, and the gene sequencing, the gene expression is turned on. You need to turn that off. And there's some things like K2 that can turn off the gene expression. We see this clinically. It's been proven and founded that K2 is very beneficial for that. The other thing that also, if you want to use aspirin, the true natural aspirin is white willow bark. You get pain relief plus anti-inflammation or anti-inflammatories. So your white willow bark is what aspirin's derived from. And all pharmacological medications are derived from plants. And so they just chemically alter and kind of synthesize and bolster up. But the way the plant world works is it's optimally balanced. And so if you have pain, your source of pain is from inflammation. If you numb the pain, you're not dealing with the inflammation. And so that's what I recommend. And there are a lot of really good resources. Where I really love my, kind of anti-inflammatories, my Inflame X has both turmeric and it has some ginger. It has some of the frankincense gum resin. It has the white willow bark. Those are all pro-anti-inflammatory. So I really love that as kind of a pro-anti-inflammatory, but you get your the aspirin derivative. And again, white willow bark is what aspirin is derived from. It just is chemically altered. Okay, so I want to take some questions. I feel like I was a fire hose today of a ton of information. And for all of you who didn't catch me in the very beginning, you're tuning in now. I've got to recommend the Answer to Cancer, the free 9-part docuseries. Today, last night they released Going All Natural and the Power of Plants. Oh, I love it. This is my sweet spot. Eating for wellness, how plants synergistically give our body information and nutrients. But tonight is really critical. It's deep cellular healing. So when you're dealing with any type of deep related imbalance within the body, this goes into the cells of the body. So the mitochondria, the functioning of the cells, the power, the ATP supply. If we want to target COVID, we need to get into the cellular healing, because for folks that are dealing with COVID or more susceptible, these underlying health concerns, there's cellular weakness and potentially cellular damage that's demonstrating and expressing in that disease pattern. So for sure, if you're concerned, maybe it's not cancer is not your concern. You just want overall health and wellness. This is free, totally free. So click on the link. You have to sign up to get the emails. You'll get an email, like an email's out around 9 p.m. And then you get a follow-up email. So in the event, let's say you sign up this morning, you might get episode 4 last night. So you might get emailed. And again, message me. I have a specific contact there that sometimes I'll say, hey, will you send so-and-so and at this email, the link so you can see episode 4. Seriously, it's awesome. I love it. I'm a total geek. I junk out on this stuff. I could read and listen to videos all the time about health and wellness because it's so fascinating how we can use natural resources to improve our health and to balance our body, turn off certain genes that are expressing in negative ways, and to really get control over our body so that we can live our healthiest and fullest lives. Elliot helped decrease my blood pressure. Eating plant-based, it's not always about diet, it's a lifestyle, but you learn why are, the flavonoids and the particular, certain berries so beneficial against, reducing inflammation, and you're going to get a lot of that info. So I love it. I have to tell you, I'm learning a lot. So, we never stop learning when it comes to our body. And the more you learn, the more you know about how your body works, as well as the latest technology, latest therapeutics. You're able to be in a more driver's seat role. You're in more control over how are you going to choose to live your life? How are you going to choose what types of methodologies and approaches to take at keeping your body healthy and well? So I love that. Knowledge is power, and I want to deliver that to you. So it's great. Emily says, I found part of the reason I have been feeling so crappy lately. My vitamin D was 22. Oh, I'm on 50K 2 times a week for 3 months. Then I retest. My doctor says he's going to get my level to 100. I'm curious why you're only doing 50 twice a week. I'd be doing it daily. Daisy wants to say hi. Come here, Daisy. Oh, she wants to say hi to everybody. Say hi, puppy. Oh, my puppy dog. This is such a good doggy. Say hi, Daisy. Say hi, everybody. Oh, little kisses. So Daisy's our sweet little rescue. He's going to be my shadow. And Brian, I have to tell you guys, I'm so mad at Brian. Our other pup, my flat coat, her breed is a flat coat retriever. They have this beautiful, really unique long hair. And she gets matted a lot, usually behind her ears when she's drinking water and getting into all sorts of stuff in our yard. And he ordered clippers. And they're known because they've got feathering behind their legs and this beautiful bushy tail and hair. He went to town on some of her hair, and I'm like, she doesn't even look like a flat coat. So that happened last night. That was real exciting. I know, hi puppy. So Emily, I would ask your doctor. I don't know if he's got you on a script, but see if just know the one thing at 22, it's going to take months for you to get up. But definitely add some. Oh, here she comes. Hi, Mina. Let's see if you can see her. See how pretty she is. Hi, Mina. We heard your name. Hi, puppy. Yeah, he's shaved her quite a bit. So part of our issue with a long-haired dog, and it was really cold in the winter here, she sheds a lot. And so he's usually the one dealing with the shed. And so he just decided to take it into his own hands. However, as a classic female, she's highly sensitive and runs anytime you do any type of grooming. So usually we outsource our grooming. We do the furminator. She has 2 layers of fur. And so that usually helps, but we haven't done that. We're not going to do the furminator. So Brian went a little intense. Elliot says, your advice has helped decrease my blood pressure. I should have said it completely. Oh, Elliot. Yay. I'm so excited. I love that. Thank you. Elliot, would you do me a favor? Will you go to my Facebook page and give me a review highlighting, if you feel open to it, highlighting your story? I really appreciate communication, and it helps other people feel like there is an option to have things turn around. You can take control despite what doctors have told you. And I've been in that category where they've said, oh, well, this is just genetic, please. We all have genes, but the reality is we can go deeper. And that's why, again, the answer to cancer tonight, lesson 5, deep cellular healing. This is great, especially for any of us that have autoimmunity, chronic fatigue. It's going to be great. Can you take white willow bark if you have Hashimoto's? Yes, I haven't seen anything that says that it causes any challenges. So Instagram, you guys are going to go off here in a minute. I'm going to continue answering a few questions on YouTube, and then my work day begins, my solo work day. Very excited. Peace and quiet. This will be the first day since I think maybe the last week of February that I had by myself, like more than 8 hours by myself. Can you believe that? I was like, go, stay for dinner. All right, Instagram, I'll see you guys on Monday. Bye. Okay, so let me save this. Let me post this really fast. So, okay, I want to answer any of your questions. Ragdoll cats. Oh, yeah, I'd love to have a ragdoll at some point in my future. We came up to Georgia with 2 kitties. One was terminal with a cancer diagnosis that it's amazing. She lived almost a full year after it. 4 surgeries. Vet was amazing in Florida. And I just, I'm not totally ready. But there will be a time where I'm going to adopt a boy kitty because all of the female dogs love Brian and I'm the adopter and they end up loving him. So I'm going with the boy this time. Okay, so let me just save this really fast. Skin. Okay, I'm just going to label this COVID skin rash. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so ask me some questions here and then I will go back and add. So on Instagram, I'll go back and add some of the edits. Okay, so post. Okay. Yeah, vitamin D. And if you guys need to test your vitamin D, I have those kits. If you don't want to go in, you're really locked down like we are. We're kind of minimizing our exposure. It's a pinprick on a little test paper, and you kind of do we call it blood spot, and then you mail it in. Okay, so Gmail account says, even after more than a year of chemotherapy, I have muscle weakness and no endurance. Gmail account, definitely check out The Answer for Cancer. This particular lesson, I'm hoping you could get lesson 4. Email me if you get in, and then just send me your email address and I can send it to my rep who's running. They're great. Okay, so that's on Instagram. Okay, let's see. Let's see, I think do we have more questions? Okay, yeah, we got more questions. Okay. Margaret says, the series on cancer is wonderful. Yay. So many great voices. Should you take K2 and flavonoids as a preventative measure? And what do you recommend for inflammation? So yes, K2, definitely just make sure, talk with your doctor or pharmacist. Girls are wrestling. Talk with your pharmacist, because if you're on any medications, I want to make sure there's no drug or drug contraindications with that. But yes, they are very, just overall, K2 is one of those where we are not getting that tested. Like most of the time, people aren't getting their vitamin D levels tested either. And they're really critical compounds and building blocks to the functionality of our body. And in the world of strokes and heart attacks, if you can reduce that, where we see heart disease is, the top 3 of killers of, it's one of the leading causes of death, then that's a very beneficial way of targeting that. So flavonoids, obviously eat all of what you can. K2 ghee, I talked about this yesterday. Ghee, Ghee, it's a healthy fat. It's fantastic. And by the way, if you guys have Aldi, you can grab ghee at Aldi. Okay, so let's see what else. Oh, peacefully happy. My husband did the same thing to our dog, so I feel have a gorgeous pair of pill. I was fine with it until he shaved the head. Oh no. Yeah, I got so mad at him. And then he's like, I found another one. I mean, her mats get really big, and she's got fine hair and a lot of it. And in the wintertime, she just gets really fluffy. But yeah, I was like, don't touch my dog again. So this is so stressful. And she literally, you can see like she hunkered down. He's like with the shears. I told him he was shaving her like a sheep. Was exaggerating quite a bit. Okay, so Brenda, any suggestions for getting rid of fluid around the ankles and never goes away? Okay, so Yes, I have 49 videos on lymphatic drainage therapies and techniques, DIYs. So check out my lymphatic therapy playlist. But there are a lot of different ways to do that. The lymph, it's called Lymph Stim, which is in my full script store. I would have you on that on a daily basis, probably taking 2 to 3 doses a day. And then compression therapy, it's something not a lot of people are aware of, but compression socks, compression stockings. I wear compression tights where they go down to my ankle. So you might want, hose where it's closed toed, or even now you can have open toes. Those are going to be beneficial. If you've got pooling, something's going on lymphatically. It might be vascular or it might be lymphatic. And sometimes vascular issues create lymphatic issues. And that's a concern I'm having. And I have yet to talk to some of my referral docs who are in the vascular surgery centers and vascular offices to see if they're starting to see some of that transition where the COVID is causing these micro blood clots and pooling of blood. Where there's pooling of blood, there's going to be pooling of fluid, and that becomes a lymphatic burden. So I'm feeling the sense I need to create more video content on that. And speaking of video content, I am going to be pulling together today the beginning kind of framework where I'm going to choose a date, and I'll have the beginning framework where you guys can become a part of my, I am going to host a workshop. I mentioned this, I think, in April, and it's just so time consuming. I need dedicated time to focus, but I'm going to conduct a webinar, workshop, if you will, on hormone health to help you balance your hormones. And my goal is to do these workshops every month. And so stay tuned. They are going to be paid workshops, but it'll be less than $25 to be a part of that. And I'm very excited. We'll have a replay you can watch, downloadable details and stuff like that. So just stay tuned. I'm working on that a lot today. Okay, so let's see. Do I sell the compression tights at your store? Yes, I do. I need to post. We're in a little bit of a transition because usually most of the time I like to fit folks for all the compression garments and stuff. We sell them and I work with a lot of different vendors. Juso is my favorite. I love their tights because they're all different colors. So I can actually match my tights. They have all these pastel colors. They have a new season of colors. And so, yes, I do. I am probably going to initially post it up on my website, but then I'm going to need to work with each order until I get a different shopping cart. I'm not equipped. My shopping cart right now is not equipped where you can choose your sizes and I can add a size chart. So I need to set up a different system like Shopify, which sounds simple, but it's so complex. So one of my team members is going to help me with the technical stuff on that. And Pat's right. I have a huge library. Again, this is in the 701, 702 videos that I've posted. And let's see. What about ghee for Trader Joe's? Yeah, ghee. I've purchased Trader Joe's ghee. You just want to make sure it's grass-fed, clean. Check the ingredients. Honestly, I haven't shopped there since all this happened. But TJ Maxx and Marshalls, I used to get ghee for next to nothing. They sometimes was $3.99, $4.99, but that's around the price that I can get it at Aldi. And $4.29 versus like $8.99, $9.99. It's totally different. So you can get 2 for the price of 1. And I use ghee for everything. Like even we'll have edamame. I'll put ghee in the pot and put my edamame in. Sometimes I'll make gyozas. This is some of my Japanese stuff that I'll do. And I'll use ghee as my base to get those crispy before I steam them. I have to look, Emily. I believe I do, but I think they're blood serum. And that gets to be where I can't do across state lines because I have to, hi Daisy, be qualified to give you a script. So let me look into that. There are a few new labs, and I'm not even meeting with any of my reps and stuff with the labs because I'm not operating at the clinic right now. Tracy, my daughter has EDS and needs to wear compression socks and also wants it for her midsection. She's extremely petite, 4'9", 100 pounds. Is there compression? Yes, absolutely. I'm not 100 pounds, but I'm definitely on the thin side, smaller side of the sizing for Juzo. And yes, they actually do children's. They cater to all different ages, but yeah, there would definitely be. And EDS is great. Compression does really well. Same with POTS. I put a lot of patients with POTS in compression. Okay, so let's see if there's any other questions. I see tuxedo kitties. Oh my gosh, you guys, there was a kitty that was rescued behind the coals, and apparently she had kittens. Oh, she was so cute. She had some sort of plastic like plate. I don't know how she did it. It was like styrofoam, but her head got in and, you know, it wasn't restricting her ability to eat or breathe. But I know I'm a rescue lunatic. I watch all those videos. Like that's everything that comes up on Facebook. And so they are fostering those kitties, but I'm not ready yet. I'll know it. I always feel like animals choose us. So I'll just wait, and maybe a kitty will come into our yard. Who knows? Dwayne, hey Dwayne, 63-year-old. My D3 is 63.25, was taking a 5K D3 with the increase of COVID, bumped it up to 25K enough. I take K2 zinc astragalus also. So, I think 25,000 is a good dosage in the 60 range. I think you're fine. I would retest it, you know, about 4 or 5 months after you began supplementing at that, just to make sure you monitor your levels, but also to get a sense of how well are you absorbing it. Let's see. Yes, Pat has mostly rescues. Yeah, I'm a big fan of rescuing. We got lucky with Mina being she was probably the runt of her litter, and she was rescued from, that's our flat coat, the one who got shaved by Brian. She came, I saw her on Facebook, and it was a Pilots for Paws program where these pilots, you know, ride these Cessnas and they fly in and they go to the kill shelters and bring the puppies out. She apparently was roaming free. And I don't know if she had other siblings. She did. She came in, she was a rented litter. All of them had been fostered or adopted out. And she looked, when I saw her picture, she looked like a big fluffy teddy bear. And I remember thinking, that's a Newfoundland. Like, they're great. They're chill. They're relaxed. They're really calm. And so I sent messages and was like, I need to meet this dog, and met her. And I should have known when the fosterer was like, okay, I'll let you foster adopt her. And like the girl took off in the meeting. It was at the center where they have all the adoptions. And so I was with other people, but like she peeled down. I was like, oh my gosh. And so I was ill-equipped. I was just going to meet her. I had no plan of bringing her home. And she stunk so bad. She had really bad yeast infections in her ear. It was like tarry black gunk. Oh, it was awful. And she cried and scraped her crate. I crate trained them. It was a total crate fail. She would bend the metal bars. Literally, she would bend them out. So I don't even know how she did that, but she bent the metal bars out. She was also Houdini. She'd escape out of her crate through like a little sliver like this. And I first started dating Brian when all this happened, and he hated her. He'd come over and she'd jump all over him. You know, lo and behold, she's his dog. So it's kind of funny. All right. So friends, thanks for tuning in. Oh, Monica, you had to put your cocoa down. I'm sorry. You know, people who downplay the experience we have as, you know, pet owners, they're part of your family. And I feel you. We're going on over a year since my last one, Wellington, passed, and 2 years around this time since I lost Lacey. And Lacey was like my love. She would come and sleep, and like I'd sleep on the bed and she'd just sleep in the nook here and purr. I still miss that. So it's going to take a special kitty to fill some of those shoes. All right, Dwayne, thank you. $20 for the live chat. I'm grateful. I appreciate that. He says, when your state doesn't recognize alternative doctors, this channel is great. Yes, it's very challenging, that world. Okay, so lots of love, Monica. And, you know, we have such a limited time with them. I know you have so many great fond memories, and those are all the happy ones. All right. Thanks, friends. Stay tuned on Monday. We're going to talk a lot about chronic fatigue syndrome. That's going to be the topic that we'll talk about. And I'll give you a lot of tips. So definitely forward this on, comment on this video. I'm excited. My remote mic, my Sennheiser is like a really great remote mic. That's working. So yay, it clearly was some issue on my end. And appreciate your time for tuning in. And go back when this gets wrapped, please comment. That totally helps me get eyeballs on this video. And I'm grateful for the live chat, Dwayne. Mwah! Thank you, thank you. Have a great Saturday. I can't wait to share with you all of my productivity for today. All right, you guys, have a great day. Bye, everybody. Thanks again, Pat, for moderating. Bye.